So I think we can begin. Okay. So, just to kick things off, of course, this is SIDM has been working with Japan for the past couple of years now, and we have had multiple interactions with ATLA, and we have been working on bringing together our industries and finding out opportunities. And with whatever is going on around the world, I think it's a very opportune moment for both industries to talk together, and that is how we signed our MOU with ISIC Japan in April this year. And this is from that MOU, this is the first activity that we are engaging with. And with that backdrop, I'm very thankful to all the senior dignitaries that are here. So with that, Admiral John, I'll hand it over to you to begin the proceedings.
Thank you very much, Excellencies. Ladies and gentlemen, most of you are on the ether. So I think that this, in and of itself, is a good way to introduce the high technology era in which we live. Now, Japan and India, they respectively live in a tough neighborhood. We all have some really good neighbors, and I'm afraid we have a few hoods as well. And that really defines our neighborhood. And within this milieu, I'm delighted that the ISIC, that is the International Security Industry Council of Japan, and the Society for Indian Defense Manufacturers, under the aegis of the CII, that is SIDM, have joined hands to promote industry collaboration to enhance the security of both countries and to promote a stable, free, and open Indo-Pacific. Now, we all talk about this Indo-Pacific as being based upon a free and open paradigm, resting upon a rules-based order in which the rules are not defined by one or another capital or country, but are actually arrived at through consensus internationally and taking all views into account. Now, this particular rules-based order applies across the realms of maritime trade as well as of industry-to-industry collaboration. It encompasses continental as well as maritime constructs, and therefore it is the principle upon which the entire relationship between Japan and India must necessarily stand. The rules-based order that will lead to and promote a stable, free, and open Indo-Pacific, which is based upon inclusivity of all nations that wish to adhere to these rules that define the current order. Now, our two entities, namely ISIC and SIDM, seek not only to promote and enhance collaboration between traditional defense industry majors, but also to provide supply chain and development partnerships from amongst companies in both countries, which may not necessarily have been defense suppliers traditionally, but which have nevertheless developed commercial leading-edge technologies and products that have defense applications. Now, our trick, our USP will be how to bring all of this together, how to not merely have a relationship which is purely commercial, but one which is developmental, one which is future ready, and one in which both countries and the region that they represent so ably will in fact prosper. Now, Mr. James Angelis, who's the president of the ISIC Japan, he chairs an advisory board and a set of special advisors who provide guidance and, I dare say, some substantive wisdom to a group of very able directors within ISIC. And complementing James and the ISIC is, of course, the CII's SIDM, which for the period 2021 to 23 is presided over by Mr. S.P. Shukla, who heads the defense vertical of the Mahindra Group in India. And he is, of course, amongst India's foremost leaders with 4 decades of rich and varied experience. Prior to him assuming the presidency of the SIDM, he has been the vice president for the last couple of years, from 2019 to 2021. And therefore, we have industry represented in perhaps the most effective manner, which is through chambers and confederations, rather than having individual industries alone talking to their respective counterparts. Today, the agenda really involves some first-rate guidance providers in the form of Mr. Gupta, who will be Neeraj Gupta, who is the co-chair of the SIDM Committee on Exports and is also an international, and is also the managing director of MKU Limited. He will be followed by Ambassador His Excellency Sanjay Kumar Verma, Ambassador of India to Japan, and thereafter we will be riveted in terms of our attention to the words of wisdom provided by His Excellency Satoshi Suzuki, Ambassador of Japan to India. And then we will hand over the proceedings to the redoubtable and inimitable Professor Taniguchi Tomohiko, who has enthralled Indian and Japanese audiences for over 2 decades. And I have had the great privilege of interacting with him, albeit as a fly on the wall, for some time now. And I am looking forward to his moderation of an extremely impressive panel. And so after the ambassadors are introduced, I will, of course, also be requesting Mr. Anurag Bajpai, who is the Joint Secretary in the Defense Industries Production of the Ministry of Defense, Division of the Ministry of Defense, to offer some thoughts himself. So without further ado, let me hand over the proceedings and request Mr. Gupta to please kick off our interaction for today. So, Neeraj, if it's okay by you, would you lead us on into what promises to be a most fascinating morning? It's over to you, Neeraj, and I'm going to mute myself for the time being.
Thank you, Admiral Chauhan, for setting the context. Thank you. His Excellency, Mr. Sanjay Kumar Verma, Ambassador of India to Japan. His Excellency, Mr. Satoshi Suzuki, Ambassador of Japan to India. Mr. Anurag Bajpai, Joint Secretary, Defense Industries Production, Department of Defense Production, Ministry of Defense. Mr. Takahiro Araki, Head of International Cooperation Office, ATLA, Japan Ministry of Defense. Mr. James Angelus, President, ISEC Japan. Good morning to all in India and good afternoon to all in Japan. It is really my pleasure to welcome you all to this India-Japan Defense Industry Dialogue, which has been jointly organized by the Society of Indian Defense Manufacturers, popularly known as SIDM, and the International Security Industrial Council, ISIC, Japan. In April this year, SIDM and ISIC Japan signed an MOU to foster bilateral defense industry cooperation and work towards identifying technologies and areas of collaboration. Today's interaction has been organized to build upon this MOU and discuss mutually beneficial opportunities for the defense industries of our two countries. Last few years have seen an impressive expansion and deepening of India's special strategic and global partnership with Japan. Cooperation in strategic areas has expanded via enhanced joint exercises and R&D cooperation in the defense and security area, cooperation in peaceful uses of nuclear energy, and cooperation in outer space. On the economic front too, several initiatives have been taken to take the India-Japan relationship forward. As I speak, I am in Japan on a business visit to further develop our association with Japanese companies and to expand our present position as an exporter of armor and surveillance equipment for use by various Japanese forces. I consider it as a privilege to be addressing this gathering from Japan. I see a lot of scope for many Indian and Japanese companies to cooperate in this area, which can benefit both the countries. For India, gaining self-reliance in defense production has become a priority, and there is a need for the country to rely on its capabilities and resources in order to avoid unforeseen delays in supply chain and deliveries. Given India's geopolitical circumstances, it is imperative for our armed forces to be equipped with the best equipment and act as a key net security provider for the region. The challenge is also to convert India from major importer of defense equipment to an exporter in an environment where more and more countries like India are looking to develop indigenous defense capabilities. India's objective is to benefit from Japan's technological prowess in its pursuit of defense modernization and diversifying its sources of acquisition. Accordingly, defense and security cooperation has been identified as one of the priority areas for conceiving the new signature projects. Japan has been acknowledged as a privileged partner in the Make in India drive, and the leadership of the two countries have professed defense technology cooperation as having the potential to emerge as a key pillar for bilateral defense relations. As regional powers having similar goals and values, it makes a lot of sense for India and Japan to come together and pool their resources to develop technologies of the future, such as artificial intelligence, 3D printing, Internet of Things, etc. We need to identify collaborative opportunities with friendly foreign countries across the globe and be a partner in their security and growth. Before concluding, as the chairman of SIDM's International and Exports Committee, I would like to reiterate our commitment towards fostering defense industrial ties between the two countries. I am certain we can identify mutually beneficial opportunities and fulfill the defense and aerospace requirements of not only our respective armed forces, but of other countries as well. I am confident this interaction will provide a fillip to the ongoing engagement between the two countries. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Neeraj, for that wonderful opener. As many of you who are in India are aware, India is a somewhat cricket-obsessed country, and I don't think we could have had a better opening dash than that provided by Neeraj. So with that, let me make one comment alone, emanating from the wonderful introduction made by Mr. Gupta, and that is to say that India seeks in the defense space to be a net provider of security, which implies that there are many providers of security. There is some gross value which encompasses them all, and India wishes to be a net provider of security. And I think that that's a wise distinction to bear in mind. Otherwise, net security provider tends to be open to some interpretation. So with that, and to elaborate upon how exactly Japan and India might well coordinate and cooperate in order to provide this sort of holistic security, which is not limited to military security, as I mentioned earlier, but encompasses all aspects that will bear upon security within the Indo-Pacific. It is my great honor and privilege to request our ambassador of India to Japan, His Excellency Mr. Sanjay Kumar Verma, to please take the floor, take up the mic, and guide us through this particular passage. Just a word or two about His Excellency. Ambassador Verma has rich and varied experience in the diplomatic field. He's been our Consul General in Hong Kong. He's served at the Embassy of India in China, in Vietnam, and Turkey, and also been our Consul General in Italy. He was our ambassador to the Republic of Sudan and has done many interesting, varied, and really important tenures within the Ministry of External Affairs in New Delhi, and where he was last prior to leading us with such distinction and leading Indian interests with such distinction in Japan. Ambassador, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Admiral Chauhan. Thank you for honoring me for being here. His Excellency, Mr. Suzuki Satoshi, good friend of ours, both India and mine. Mr. Neeraj Gupta, Chairman, SIDM International and Exports Committee. Mr. James Angelus, President of ACSA Japan. Joint Secretary, Mr. Vajpayee. Professor Taniguchi Tomohiko, who had been a great friend of India. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, namaste, konnichiwa, and very good morning to you in India. Good afternoon to everyone joining from Japan. At the very outset, let me take this opportunity to thank both the Society of Indian Defense Manufacturers and International Security Industry Council Japan for inviting me to this event. It is a great pleasure for me to attend this event. I would also like to congratulate both the organizations for signing a memorandum of understanding on a framework for cooperation. I'm confident that this initiative will open further doors for deepening defense trade cooperation between India and Japan. As we know, India and Japan enjoy close, warm, and historic relations that has culminated into a special strategic and global partnership that spans across a wide spectrum of areas, including defense and security, trade and investment, science and technology, education and culture, and human resources support. The year 2022 will mark the 70th anniversary of establishment of diplomatic relations between India and Japan, which will also coincide with the 75th anniversary of India's independence, as we call Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. The summit meeting between our leaders early this year underscored our commitment towards deepening India-Japan spatial, strategic, and global partnership further and realizing a free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific. Partnership in defense and security areas has evolved over the years and today forms an integral part of our bilateral ties and bilateral conversation. Our exchanges have strengthened due to growing convergence on strategic matters, and its significance is growing from the common outlook on issues of peace, security, and stability in the region. I'm confident that the upcoming high-level ministerial meeting will further chart the course for greater cooperation in all spheres of defense and security. The momentum in our defense and security partnership has been sustained despite the pandemic through various dialogue mechanisms and high-level exchanges between our two countries. It has been quite satisfying to see the seamless engagements between all the three components of our defense forces, even during times when physical meetings have been restricted. We have had various additions, exercises like GIMEX, Malabar, and Dharma Guardian, wherein both our sides have enhanced interoperability and built a high level of confidence in operating alongside each other. This is extremely important for net security, as Admiral Chauhan just talked about. Both sides are also looking forward to the conduct of the inaugural edition of the bilateral fighter exercise in the near future. Moving on to the field of defense equipment and technology cooperation, I understand that it has taken some time for us to align our mutual interests and mutual concerns and to understand each other's practices and procedures. Both sides now have identified projects in various areas to further enhance defense equipment and technology cooperation and the progress of the ongoing projects have been satisfactory. In today's challenging times, I'm sure that you will agree about the immense potential for increasing defense cooperation between our two countries in all fields of technology cooperation, as indicated by Mr. Gupta earlier in the session. Critical technologies will continue to play a quintessential role in strengthening defense of our national and global interests. We need to quicken the pace of efficient and effective defense production and defense technology cooperation. We must continue to explore new areas such as artificial intelligence, robotics, electromagnetic spectrum, space, cyberspace, underwater domain awareness, high-energy lasers, cryptography, sensors, optic cables, real-time information exchanges, to name just a few. There have been 6 editions of the Joint Working Group on Defense Equipment and Technology Cooperation, and both sides have endeavored to provide impetus to the engagements between the defense industry of our two nations. After the 5th edition of the Joint Working Group, both sides have shared a list of mutually identified dual-use items and technologies for mutual interest. Subsequently, about 23 Indian companies had expressed interest in dual-use items, and the process of interaction between the Indian and Japanese companies has started. However, the progress of interaction has been rather slow, and there is a need to facilitate companies for regular and frequent interactions, especially at the initial levels when they need to develop their understanding of each other and gain trust. I'm confident that this collaboration between SIDM and ISIC will provide the necessary impetus to the defense industry in both our countries. I would like to highlight that the Government of India has announced certain defense items, products, and weapon systems to be produced in India under Make in India initiative, which were earlier imported from various countries. This may be a good area where Japanese companies may come forward to assist, do hand-holding, and finally help us in indigenization of these items produced by Indian companies solely or jointly. Apart from this, Government of India has undertaken few initiatives to boost domestic defense manufacturing, which are in line with the clarion call made by our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, for Atmanirbhar Bharat or Self-Reliant India campaign. In the year 2020, the government announced increasing the foreign direct investment limit from 49% to 74% under the automatic route and up to 100% and through the government route in the defense sector. India has received around 494 crores of Indian rupees of foreign direct investment in the defense sector since revising the policy relating to it in September 2020. In order to promote Make in India in defense sector, the government has issued 584 defense licenses to 358 private companies for setting up of manufacturing units, which includes 107 licenses for weapon manufacturing. In addition, there are 16 defense public sector companies manufacturing various platforms and equipment for the armed forces. The Indian government is establishing 2 defense industrial corridors, one each in Uttar Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, opening defense research and development for industry, startups, and academia with 25% of defense research and development budget earmarked to promote development of defense technology in our country. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for the Japan defense industry to take advantage of these investor-friendly initiatives by investing in these sectors and also looking at transfer of technologies so that our combined strength in the technology could be a further pillar in our strategic partnership. I wish to reiterate that there is immense potential for cooperation between the defense industries of the two countries. Japan, with its technical capability and established avenues of research in future technologies, which are critical by nature, has much more to offer, not only to the Indian Armed Forces, but also to our public sector undertakings and defense industry as a whole. Similarly, India offers a huge pool of trained and young manpower, investor-friendly initiatives by the government, and a reliable market for high-end military equipment. In conclusion, I'm confident that the collaboration between SIDM and ISIC will help in identifying the roadblocks which prevent us from realizing the full potential of even more closer cooperation between the defense industries of our two countries and offers us solutions to overcome these issues. Once again, I would like to thank SIDM and ISIC for organizing this event. I wish the further deliberations all the success. Dhanyavad. Arigato gozaimasu. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Excellency. As you can see, you really deserve a thunderous round of applause, but I hope you will accept two hands clapping like mad. And before we turn to our next very distinguished and eminent speaker, I did want to make one comment, and that is that, you know, it is quite important and it is a driving feature of the ISIC SIDM dyad, let me put it like that, where the effort is to move away from simply buying and selling defense products to one which is in consort with the prime ministerial thrust for Atmanirbhar Bharat, where in particular I wanted to draw attention to the Make 3 segment of the new defense procurement policy, where it says that although these items under this Make 3 need not be developed or designed indigenously, they can be manufactured in India as import substitution, and Indian firms may manufacture these either in collaboration or with transfer of technologies. So the main point I wish to emphasize is that if we can actually invest human potential, human beings, into technological development, then I think that road might be a more enduring one than if we were to simply follow the examples of some other countries which are stuck in the rut of simply buying and selling. But to elaborate upon this in far better fashion than I am ever going to be able to do, it is my great honor once again to now request His Excellency Mr. Satoshi Suzuki, Ambassador of Japan to India, to deliver his guidance to us all. Now, Ambassador Suzuki has had a distinguished career, as may be expected, and has tenanted several positions of eminence. He served as the Special Assistant to the Director General at the International Atomic Energy Agency. He's been the Deputy Director General for Crisis Management and in the European Affairs Bureau. He's been the Consular Affairs Bureau as well. He's been the Director General in Intelligence and Analysis Services, and has been the Deputy Minister for Foreign Policy and the Director General in the Foreign Policy Bureau prior to gracing India by his very eminent presence. Excellency, I have not the words to describe the number of fields and the depth to which your particular personality and your professional career has driven you, and the summits that you have scaled from the depth of that vertical knowledge across many, many horizontals. So I think that perhaps I might not do better than simply handing over the proceedings to you, Excellency. You have the floor.
Thank you, Admiral Chauhan. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, namaskar, good morning, and konnichiwa. It's my great pleasure to address you all today at this webinar. I'm very grateful for Mr. Neeraj Gupta, Chairman SIDM, and Mr. James Angelas, President ISIC Japan, for giving me this opportunity. I'm very pleased that also His Excellency Mr. Sanjay Kumar Verma is joining us today and share his views with us on this important topic of our bilateral defense cooperation. This is a very good occasion to remind everyone of the 70th anniversary of the establishment of Japan-India diplomatic relations. I'd like to thank all those involved in organizing this webinar, as well as all the participants who will make valuable input for this webinar today. Japan and India are special strategic and global partners who share fundamental values such as freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. Also, we share strategic interests of peace, stability, rules-based order in the Indo-Pacific and beyond. Our two countries, as Ambassador Varma pointed out, while we further advance political and economic cooperation field, and we are steadily deepening cooperation in a wide range of defense field as well. There are several ongoing activities between the Indian and Japanese defense authorities, high-level staff exchanges, staff talks, joint exercises like a Dharma Guardian exercise for ground forces, Shinyu Maitri exercise for air forces, JIMEX as well as Malabar exercises for naval forces, as Ambassador Varma mentioned, educational staff exchanges between Indian NDC and Japanese NDA, port calls by naval vessels and aircrafts, to name a few. Furthermore, earlier this March, the reciprocal provision of supplies and services was implemented for the first time. Indian fleet tanker providing replenishment to Japanese destroyer in the Bay of Bengal, enhancing the interoperability between Japan and India. Japan-India defense cooperation is achieving new milestones and becoming deeper than before. It is in this context that I believe tangible cooperation in defense equipment and technology transfer is essential to take Japan-India defense cooperation to a next level. The two countries have already signed 3 agreements, which form an essential foundation for strengthening defense collaboration. Agreement on the protection of classified military information, agreement on the reciprocal provision of supplies and services, and agreement on the transfer of defense equipment and technology. However, to my regret, no concrete outcome has been achieved yet in the area of defense equipment and technology cooperation. I would say it is a missing piece of our overall bilateral defense cooperation. In March and May this year, Prime Minister Kishida and Prime Minister Modi visited each other's capitals. The joint statement issued in March stated that two countries would identify specific areas for future cooperation in the field of defense equipment and technology. This particular issue will be discussed during the upcoming 2+2 dialogue at the ministerial level in Tokyo, which is expected to take place next month. It has been 3 years since I took office in Delhi as ambassador, and I strongly believe that it is time to show concrete results, outcome to the public out of ongoing discussions on this particular point. Looking at a global situation now, it is pointed out that India has a traditional and long-term military partnership with Russia, and India armed forces have relied heavily on Russia-made equipment, weapon systems, and military platforms. I know this situation should be looked at in the context of India's long history after World War II and following Cold War. Of course, I'm aware that India has been making efforts to diversify the sources of weapons and military equipment with countries like the US, France, and some European nations. However, following Russian invasion of Ukraine in February this year, I recognize it is becoming a matter of urgency for India to accelerate this process of diversification. I believe that Japan should and can contribute to this diversification. Japan can be a partner as a reliable supplier of defense equipment. I believe that strengthening Japan-India defense equipment and technology cooperation will not only contribute to this diversification of India's procurement sources, but also will eventually benefit the Japanese defense industry, because it would offer stable supply destination and ensure business predictability and continuity. I think Japan can contribute to India's Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative, Self-Reliant India initiative, through co-development, co-design, and co-manufacture. We can contribute under India's Make in India policy as well. Now, let me give you some examples of what Japan can do from my perspective. Japan is now developing a next generation fighter jet to replace the current F-2 aircraft, which will retire in the mid-2030s. I understand that India is also pursuing for advanced medium combat aircraft to develop indigenous fifth generation stealth fighters. I'd like to see any kind of collaboration or cooperation in this area. Also, Japan has been a leading maritime country for many years. Hence, Japan is highly capable of building naval vessels and related systems. India's future construction of naval vessels, submarines, will be able to take advantage of Japan's advanced technology and expertise. Apart from major military platforms, if we look at Japan-made components, parts, and material that make up these platforms and military equipment, I'm sure that you can find items that can match the need of Indian forces, including radar systems and other non-lethal systems, components. There must be enough technologies and material available in Japan. Let me elaborate a little bit on this. Fireproofing vinyl and moisture-absorbing heat-generating material can be used for military uniforms. Film-type solar cells, perovskite solar cells, will provide lower noise and more agile military operations in the field. And gallium nitride semiconductors, next generation semiconductors, are regarded as promising essential parts for high performance radar systems. Military technology has shown remarkable progress in recent years. Modern warfare combines the traditional domains like land, sea, and air with new domains such as outer space, cyberspace, and electromagnetic spectrum. Technology innovations such as AI, quantum technology, autonomous systems, and post-5G are indispensable sets of high technologies to be able to engage in modern warfare. And therefore, the Japanese self-defense forces are planning to develop and employ them for their future operations. For example, SDFs will soon put into operation a space situational awareness radar, and they are in the process of procuring SSA laser ranging equipment. And they are also conducting a demonstration project to enhance military installation security, employing drones and unmanned vehicles on local 5G networks. Researches on unmanned ground vehicles and AI-based image processing are also ongoing. I think there will be ample room for cooperation in these cutting-edge technologies between Japan and India. I'm aware that India has announced 3 indigenous positive lists for defense equipment and is making efforts to pursue domestic production. Japanese companies should make themselves available at a component or material level, if not entire weapon systems, for assisting India's effort. In order to realize this, I believe close and frequent communication between the two sides is quite essential to better understand and to identify needs of counterparts and try to find out feasible solutions by employing each other's available technologies and skills. Last week, I had a chance to visit one of state-owned military equipment companies in Hyderabad and learned that interactions are going on with Japanese counterparts on a very particular subject. I'm very glad to hear that. In this respect, today's seminar is most relevant and timely. I hope that panel discussion will provide us with new perspectives for further discussions. My embassy will be happy to liaise with Japanese companies if any one of you are interested in collaborating with Japanese companies. In closing, I wish this seminar a great success and hope everyone will have fruitful findings and takeaways from this seminar. Thank you very much, and dhanyawad.
Thank you very much, Excellency, for providing both specifics as well as for providing us with the grand overview of how we might put meaning and substance to a greater and greater extent to the 70th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between our countries going forward from this point onwards. And indeed, it is fitting that we should have the next of our speakers being someone who can actually not only lead us out of the woods, so to speak, but also enable us to see the forests for the trees and not get confused in both of those. So it is with great pleasure and a sense of pride and honor that I would like to request Sri Anurag Bajpai to take the floor. He is currently, as many of you have already been informed, the Joint Secretary of Defense Industries Production in India's Ministry of Defense. He holds additional charge as the Joint Secretary PNC, and he is actually has a rich background in terms of handling policy, planning, and administration, ranging from forestry across to environmental policy, energy, women's empowerment, global governance, and he has been able to seamlessly transition from the policy reforms that he initiated, oversaw, and executed within the legal framework of not just forestries, but the wind energy policy of India, skill development, education, infrastructure, and has done pretty much been there and done that. And to guide you and guide us all further, may I hand over the floor without further ado to Sri Bajpai. Anurag, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Vice Admiral. His Excellency, Mr. Satoshi Suzuki, His Excellency, Mr. Sanjay Kumar Verma, Mr. Neeraj Gupta, Professor Taniguchi Tomohiko, Vice Admiral Mr. Pradeep Chauhan, my fellow panelists. Very good morning. Namaste from India. I would like to extend my warm greetings to all of you. And I am of the firm opinion that today's webinar assumes greater importance, being the first such interaction between the industries of both the countries. Moving beyond a bilateral buyer-seller relationship, the partnership at the industry level may help both the countries to achieve significant success in respective regional markets. The regular interactions at the government as well as private industry level would enhance synergy between various stakeholders of the two countries. I may like to underline that regular interactions among defense industries would help in creation of an ecosystem for defense industry cooperation and potential business opportunities in respective regions. B2B interaction of the defense industry needs to enhance to identify areas of mutual interest and explore the possibilities of collaboration. India has a vast defense industrial base with 16 government public sector and expanding private sector industries supported by an ecosystem of more than 12,000 micro, small and medium enterprises. There are large number of startups working in innovation sector, defense innovation sector. There are various opportunities for cooperation between defense industries of both the countries, and a lot of potential exists for Japanese and Indian defense industries for co-production and co-development. In areas of small arms, rockets, mortars, military and specialist vehicles, and likewise. Indian industry can also be a part of supply chain to the Japanese company. There are many MSMEs and startups who are working in the country and have capability to become the part of the Japanese supply chain. Here I would like to mention an important point that India is also looking for cooperation in the space, defense space, quantum technology, semiconductors, navigational chips, anti-drones, underwater communication system. So these are the few areas where India is looking for partnership with Japanese companies. Indian approach of indigenization and self-reliance, make in India, and the necessary provisions which have been made and for bringing ease of doing business are enabling policy provisions for foreign OEMs to participate in opportunities offered in the Indian defense sector and the friendly foreign countries of India. Foreign OEMs can set up manufacturing facilities individually or in partnership with Indian companies through a joint venture or technology agreement to capitalize on these Make in India or indigenization process. Indian defense industries have expertise over a wide range of high-tech defense systems for air, land, sea, and space applications. They can offer various proven platforms, systems, subsystems, such as light combat aircraft, drones, anti-drone systems, conventional submarines, long-range surveillance radars, weapon locating radars, electro-optical devices, coastal surveillance system, OPVs, interceptor crafts, shipborne systems, and many more. Our defense industry, particularly the government public sectors, are not new. They have a legacy of more than 200 years and have proven themselves at various times. Indo-Japan partnerships in defense sector are increasing day by day. Efforts are on for engaging in the fields of lithium-ion battery technology, anti-drone systems, UGV robotics project, silicon carbide, wafer fabrication process, underwater wireless power, nanotechnologies, and so on. But these are all at discussion stage. In the last JWG meeting, Joint Working Group meeting also, these issues, these engagements were discussed. perhaps there is an urgent need that these discussions get early culmination by the two sides and we start actions. As already pointed out by Indian ambassador, that the government of India has set up two defense corridors, one in the northern part of the country and other in southern part of the country, that is Uttar Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. Here Japanese OEMs can benefit from the unique incentives being offered by the two state governments and the availability of highly skilled workforce in India. Moreover, the workforce in India may also be very cost effective. I invite Japanese defense companies to come, invest, manufacture, and do the business from India. I take an example. I would like to give an example here. Indian companies may be having, export opportunities in 10 countries. They may be working in those countries. You may be having 10 countries. If we join hands, it will become 20 countries. And we can do business together in 20 countries. So that is the commercial interest of the companies if we join hands. I am proud to convey that India's light combat aircraft, Tejas, it is a superior aircraft and has emerged as one of the top choices among India's friendly foreign countries. The Indian aerospace and defense ecosystem are emerging as a preferred manufacturing and sourcing hub with development of indigenous platforms and capabilities at par with global platforms. The Japanese defense industries may leverage these emerging capabilities to realize the twin objective of cost and quality and fulfill the requirement of Royal Japanese Armed Forces along with the commercial interest of the Japanese industries. I wish for a continued and mutually beneficial engagement between India and Japan, and I wish all success to this webinar. Thank you very much, Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bajpai. And with that, we have come to the point that we've all been looking forward to, which is the changeover to the panel discussion and, of course, to the moderation by Professor Taniguchi Tomohiko, who is such a well-known personality in India that he could very easily be holding dual nationality and with equal felicity in both countries in his remarkable ability to separate the chaff from the grain, not only in the areas of media where he has rich and varied past experience, or in the realms of academia, which at very frequent times appears arcane and difficult to penetrate. And his thoughts on Japan's academia and its motivators has long fascinated somebody like me. I dare say that I'm joined by my peers in ACSA who are equally enamored of the views that Taniguchi-san so eloquently articulates. And so without any further ado, insofar as the panel discussion is concerned, let me gracefully hand the floor and the baton over to Taniguchi-san, who I know can run the last stretch far better than I ever could. So Professor Taniguchi Tomohiko, I yield the floor to you with a sense of anticipation for the next few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Chauhan. You have flattered me. That idea is something that I have never come up with, to seek a dual nationality. I think that's a brilliant idea. If one is going to be granted to me. Now, time is running out, so I'm going to say very few words about who is going to make up today's panel. It's going to be starting with Mr. Araki Takahiro, who heads International Cooperation Office at ATLA. You may not have heard of ATLA. That's Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics Agency, which is part of the greater organization of the Defense Ministry, which is relatively new as an organ within the Ministry of Defense. And the next speaker is someone who is very well known to the audience today, Commodore Mukesh Bhargava, former chairman SIDM Naval Systems Committee. And to be followed finally by Mr. Junichi Nishiyama. Mr. Nishiyama worked for many years with Mitsubishi Heavy Industry, and his expertise covers a lot of areas, one of which is missiles development. So without further ado, let me just invite first Mr. Araki to make your very brief 5-minute brief opening remarks.
Thank you, Professor Taniguchi. My name is Takahiro Araki, Director of International Cooperation, ATLA, JMOD. So it's my honor to join today's discussion. So I'd like to explain briefly our efforts in order to promote bilateral defense equipment and technology cooperation. So as His Excellency Ambassador Suzuki mentioned, I'd like to mention about bilateral summit meeting in this May. The two leaders mentioned the area of defense equipment technology cooperation. I think we've already have the agreement of defense equipment and technology transfer. It's a kind of basis for our cooperation. So, but at this moment, we only have the joint research project on unmanned ground vehicle and robotics. So I believe that there is room for future cooperation. So my organization, ATLA, is in charge of promoting cooperation in this area. So I'd like to briefly explain the two examples of our efforts. So the first one is feasibility study. So this project is conducted by Japanese trading company. Our feasibility study started in 2020, and it is not an ordinary research study. ATLA asked Japanese trading company to find the specific cooperation project in the area of defense equipment and technology. Japanese trading company consulted with IMOD and industries of both countries. They utilized their own network in India and human resources in India. So ATLA will continue this project. So I appreciate it if Indian side could support our effort to find out the specific collaborative items. So the next example is the webinar for Japanese industries. So I understand some companies in Japan find many risks for overseas expansion. So there are risks, for example, reputation, initial investment, offset request, etc. So I understand that some Japanese companies have a kind of anxiety for the future overseas project. So, but at least government of Japan has will to promote cooperation in the area of defense equipment technology. So now we are discussing measures to support Japanese industries. Lastly, I'd like to emphasize on our direction. Our side will continue to promote defense equipment and technology transfer. And Atra will keep in touch with IMOD. So I appreciate it if IMOD and other related organizations could support our efforts. Thank you for your attention. I'd like to hand over to moderator. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Araki. If you have any questions, put them on the Q&A box rather than the chat box. Let me just invite Commodore Bhargava to give us your own thoughts and ideas about the potentiality of the bilateral cooperation. Please.
Thank you, Taniguchi-san, and Excellencies, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. We know the last few years have seen an impressive expansion of deepening India's special strategic and global partnership with Japan. Cooperation in strategic area have expanded with enhanced joint exercises, R&D cooperation in defense and security area, and cooperation in peaceful uses of nuclear energy, as well as cooperation in outer space. On the economic front also, there have been several initiatives designed to take India-Japan relationship to the next level, including the Mumbai-Ahmedabad high-speed railway, Shinkansen project, inauguration of many Japan-India Institute for Manufacturing, JIIMs, organization of regular workshop for disaster and relief reduction. Make in India Outreach has organized under its aegis agreed map for promoting Japanese investment in India, and state-level delegations from India have visited Japan, and perpetual delegations from Japan have also been to India. In addition, opening of India-Japan Startup Hub in Bangalore and participation of Japan as partner country in the World Food India 2017 and subsequent launch of Japan-India Food Council in Tokyo with Japanese food processing companies as members has further enhanced the cooperation between India and Japan, including the healthcare sector. All these initiatives are indicators of a continuous enhancement in India-Japan partnership driven by multiple stakeholders. Partnership in new technologies such as artificial intelligence, industrial Internet of Things, military Internet of Things are other potential areas which are very promising, which also leverages the complementary strengths of the Indian and Japanese industries in these technological fields. The content of these partnerships are becoming increasingly transformational. As far as defense is concerned, for Japan, defense equipment and technology cooperation is more than just an arms trade, as it has been stated by my previous speakers. It is not just a buyer-seller relationship, but it is a joint partnership in taking into account the co-design, co-development, and co-production opportunities. It is an important component also of the ex-Prime Minister Abe's large security conceptualization of Japan's proactive contribution to peace. Japanese Business Federation, or Kidenren, has prioritized India in addition to US, Europe, and Southeast Asia, while enunciating the importance of promoting defense equipment and technology cooperation with foreign countries. Despite a robust civil manufacturing base and being a global repository of dual-use technologies, the Japanese defense industries are confronting a challenging environment due to enhanced cost competitiveness and relative inexperience of Japan defense industries in a global arms market. For decades, the self-defense forces were the sole consumer for the Japanese defense industry. However, the low quantum of defense procurement by the Japanese defense forces leads to higher cost of production and lower profit margins for the Japanese defense industries. In addition, the limitation of arms exports have further curtailed the prospects of achieving more favorable economies of scale for the Japanese defense industries. Moving ahead, cost competitiveness would be the key for Japan as it goes looking forward and targets markets like Southeast Asia and India for export of its defense products. The focus of the Japanese defense industry is likely to be on international joint co-design, co-development, and co-production projects in the short to mid terms. The export would also be limited to systems and subsystems instead of big ticket platform level opportunities like submarine, tanks, or aircraft. Though one of the previous speaker, our Excellency Mr. Suzuki, did mention about that also being a possibility. The Indian industry would be interested for defense cooperation with Japan industries in the field of surveillance radars, communication technology, including the 5G, the battery technologies, precision manufacturing, electronic warfare technologies, and the future technologies in the space, cyberspace, and industrial Internet of Things. We also need to consider the recent aggressive posturing by the PLA in the East and South China Sea, which has placed restriction on exercising the Freedom of Navigation Act by the navies, global navies, and a rule-based international order. And there is a need to counter the hegemonistic approach of the PLA in the South China Sea, as well as extending it to Indian Ocean region. This also creates an important opportunities for defense and security collaboration between the Japanese and Indian defense industries. As far as SIDM is concerned, it has been spearheading the initiative to enhance defense industrial trade and has been working with Ministry of Defense, ATLA, and the Japanese industry associations on the India-Japan Joint Security Group to identify areas of mutual interest for defense cooperation. During the interaction of Commissioner ATLA with the Secretary Defense Production in November 2018, it was decided to first identify items of mutual use, study policy of both governments, and form a consequent report. Changes in policy were to be made to boost bilateral defense trade between India and Japan. To achieve this, the industry association of both sides are in the process of identifying items of mutual use. SIDM represents the Indian defense industry, while JDI, SJC, and SIJ represent the Japanese side. SIDM was invited to participate in the 5th Joint Working Group meeting on defense equipment and technology cooperation between India and Japan on the 17th-18th February 2020 in Tokyo. And from the visit, it was understood that the Japanese MOD and the industry, the thrust is on naval systems, as they consider themselves and their industry to be strong in this particular area. Further, Director General ATLA also made announcement that ATLA will take the responsibility of carrying out an assessment of the defense products and Japanese companies that wish to do defense business with India. ATLA would also finance a short training module for defense procurement procedure, which would be run by SIDM for Japanese industries. Looking forward, during my own visit to Japan a few years back as part of the Indian defense industry delegation, we had some excellent interaction with Japanese defense and aerospace companies. However, what Indian industry, including myself, we experienced certain hindrances for a smooth business-to-business collaboration between Indian and Japanese defense industries. What emerged is that Japanese industries need their government's permission for collaborating on all defense opportunities, whether it is lethal or non-lethal. Certain technologies may not be open for collaboration. Certain technologies would only be available partially due to such restrictions, and certain technologies could be available freely. Indian industry would like a clear direction from the Japanese government so as to which are fully open, which are partially open, and which are not open to Indian industry, so that we could reduce the time for deliberations and come down to exploiting the business opportunities. As has been explained by Mr. Anurag Bajpayee and the Indian ambassador, Your Excellency Mr. Verma, that Indian government has already issued 3 positive lists for indigenization of Indian defense equipment. And in addition, there is a list called Long-Term Integrated Perspective Plan, LTIPP, which is the next 15 years procurement by the Indian Ministry of Defense, and lays down a list of technologies that would be required by the Indian Armed Forces in the next 15 years. This list, these two lists would lay down the groundwork for creating an environment for co-development, co-design, and co-production for these technologies between Japanese and Indian defense industries. I think this would be the framework under which a collaboration as partners rather than buyer and sellers could start between Japanese and Indian industries. And I wish that platform like this and the MOU that ISEC and SIDM has signed would become a framework for, would become the platform for taking this collaboration forward. I look forward to more productive and fruitful engagement between Indian and Japanese defense industries with full support from the two governments to enable this B2B collaboration to take to the next level. Thank you.
The feelings on that account should be mutual on both sides. Commodore Bhargava, you have touched and raised a number of issues that are very much pertinent, such as the lack of economy of scale for Japanese defense industry and the existence of hindrances for the Japanese companies to do businesses on the defense front with countries such as India. And please, may I come back to Mr. Araki after hearing from Mr. Nishiyama on those issues. And Mr. Araki, I would be very much appreciative if you could share your thoughts on such points as was raised by Commodore Bhargava. Now, our third and last member of the panel, Mr. Nishiyama, give us your own thoughts, please.
Thank you very much, Taniguchi-san. And could I share my thought with this presentation material? Could you please make that full screen?
Slideshow, please. Someone handling the
yes. Good. Okay. I just put up this material. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and it is grateful that I could share my thought with you. And this page just showing the Japanese arms export policy briefly. And since 1967, maybe everybody knows, but we had that three principles of arms export. But it said three principles. To me, it is one principle: no arms export. And these years that Japan almost no try to export defense systems. Then that the 2014 the policy being changed, call it three principles on transfer of defense equipment and technology, and that is the door being opened. Yes, and they say that they are export allowed, but there's several limitations, and it seems to me that the door not being fully opened yet, and so I hope that the next step would be I call it a new policy to full open that include the weapon systems, parts, component, maintenance, support, training. Maybe that the current principles can allow, but there's many things that have been considered, so that I think we need a more clear direction of that the arms export control. Next page. Next page, please. This is just the experience of Japan as an example that this is a fighter aircraft case. Since 1950, we had many fighter aircraft from the U.S.,
and Japanese domestic development. And the starting from the FAD-6F and the 104, T2 is the Japan developed a first supersonic trainer that been modified to the F1. And then that F15, F4, F15, F2, and we have now that F35. And when we introduced these fighter aircraft from the US, we call it licensed production. But it is actually that when I went to the US and talked, they call it co-production. So in Japan, we use a licensed production, but that is a co-production. That is a keyword to me. And that is a phased approach that we had the full system first, then knockdown, and then full production in country in Japan. The configuration of these aircraft, we call it J option, that the Japanese unique option being applied. And we had the test facilities, and we had the training from the US for the pilot, manufacturing, maintenance, software engineers, everything. And this is our experience. Next, please. And so that the full system, the acquisition is FMS or DCS, direct commercial sales. But I think that the constraint is maintenance. Some limitation, it takes time. So we need a capability in country. And the production in Japan, that is called licensed production, still restricted to third country transfer. And the next would be the code development, shared cost and technology. This is the key, and we had some experience of the F2 and also SM3 missile. And the other experience is the indigenous development, but probably that the higher development cost and the limited sales, that could be changed. Next, please. And these are some cases that the Japan export since 2014. That the Pact Seeker Gyro to US, that is a component. And that is the Patriot missile gyro being produced in Japan under the license production. TC-90 trainer aircraft to Philippines, 2016. And now that radar system to Philippines also been agreed. And this year, because of the Ukraine war, that bulletproof vest and helmets and others been exported. But as I shown here, that US-2 to the India and Type 90 tank trying, and the Soyuz submarine to Australia, but not unfortunately, it did not happen. And so we have to, we better to try to expand to these areas. Next, please. So the I would like to consider what we have to consider to make the cooperation realize that the customer required modification we applied, implemented, cooperative R&D, in-country manufacturing, training support, maintenance support, long-time support also. And these been maybe some more that these have to be considered. And the next, please. Because of the Ambassador Suzuki and Mr. Araki-san, the briefing that the Japan and India is trying more specifically, but I like to just show some of the Japanese developed the system at the P-1 ASW patrol aircraft, C-2 transporter, US-2, and the Type 10 main battle tanks, and the 12 surface-to-ship missile system, and ASM-3. This is supersonic air-to-ship missile, carried by F-2, and the Chusan, which is a medium range surface-to-air missile. There are many more, but these I'm not suggesting just to export as a system, but based on these system, possibly India, Japan can co-develop or modify that type of the opportunity would be exist, I believe. Next page, please. As a summary, I think Japan needs to change the defense equipment technology transfer policy to expand to include the weapon systems. Now that the weapon system, as a weapon system like a missile and a fighter or submarine and others, is still reluctant. But maybe that the direction of the MOD now changing. I would like to know from Mr. Haki, and also Japan and the. I think that the government industry collaborated approach is needed, and then I would like to suggest that the India Japan explore the plausible scheme of cooperation based on the lesson learned from licensed production and phase approach. We also consider that to implement the country unique modification, and so I believe that the defense system collaboration strengthen the tie with allied country and the friendly countries. And I hope that India, Japan, and together to cooperate for making the Asia-Pacific region stabilizing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Nishiyama. That's been based on your long experience involving defense sector. Thank you. We're running out of time, but we see a couple of questions being raised by the members of the audience. But before taking one or two of those questions from the floor, may I briefly come back to you, Mr. Araki, because questions are being raised as to what more should be done by the Japanese government to expand the weapons or weapon systems from Japan to the outside world. Or you could also tell us what actually hinders those weapon systems from being exported to the external world. There must be roles to be covered also by the private sector, not necessarily by the government sector. Finally, the third question from me to you, Mr. Araki, is the Japanese government, especially the Ministry of Defense, together with the ATLA, are considering revising important documents, defense-related documents, by the end of this year, probably around December this year. May I ask you if you could share your thoughts as to what sort of directions you will be giving out as to expanding Japanese capabilities of exporting weapons and weapon systems to the world. Mr. Araki, if I may ask you to give us your thoughts.
Professor Taniguchi. So I would like to mention about the comment on Mr. Barugaba. So Barugaba-san mentioned so many factors of the of this cooperation area. So I just want to say briefly our direction. So I've already mentioned government of Japan has will to promote defense equipment and technology cooperation. And Professor Taniguchi mentioned in this year, government of Japan will revise very important strategic document. At this moment, we are discussing some measures in the area of how to cooperate, how to promote industrial cooperation. So, as I mentioned, as for industrial cooperation, there are so many factors. We need to more support industrial activities. So at this moment, I just say the area of industrial cooperation, how to strengthen such kind of cooperation is one of the important areas. So our side will continue discussion internally, and also we'll keep in touch with IMOD side, and I'd like to realize more specific measures. And finally, I'd like to find specific items for bilateral cooperation. Thank you.
Just one recommendation, if you permit, Chair.
Sure. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. As far as Indian defense requirement is concerned, as I mentioned, 15 years technology roadmap is now ready. If we really look at business to business collaboration between India and Japan, I would request Mr. Raki to ask the Japanese defense industry, with the permission of the Japanese government, which of these technologies would be free for sharing it with the Indian industry. If that list is shared, the job becomes much simpler. We don't go for a particular technology which get denied later on. So if this work can be done, that would smoothen the B2B collaboration, and it would definitely be a win-win. On that, I would just like to clarify the question that Professor Nishiyama has asked with regard to the license production versus the co-development or co-production. In that license production, you manufacture the same product. But in the co-production, you modify the requirement of the primary product to meet the customer's requirement. Like if we are looking for a fighter aircraft, we have a requirement which may be different than the J2 that you have. So that would require both the companies to come with their own technologies and jointly develop a new product which would meet the new industry's requirement. That is what becomes co-development. So what Indian industry today is looking at co-design, co-development and co-manufacturing, not on a licensed manufacturing, because what is suitable for Japanese defense forces may not be exactly required by the Indian armed forces. The technical specs would be different. So that's where the co-development comes in. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commodore Bhargava. I was wondering if you, Commodore Bhargava, might want to answer to one specific question about startups. Yeah. Startups are generally ignored in TOT license manufacturing. What is the panel's view? Because you are the one that knows very well firsthand the situation on both India and Japan. May I ask you to give us your comment on what we could do to help support startups?
Definitely, startups are definitely having a key strength in terms of technology, but what they lack is taking those technology. The technology can be used to develop a prototype, but beyond the prototype, there's a problem that the startups feel in terms of taking a proto to the series production level, and that also brings out the constriction or the restriction that they feel in terms of the funds availability, testing requirement, and manufacturability. I'm talking about the scale. They might make 5 products, they might make 2 products. But if you require 200 or 500 products, the startups neither have the resources nor the financial strength to take it there. Second problem that the startups face is that they get stuck on a particular technology, I would say, blockage. And that is where industry from Japan can handhold them to guide them how to overcome those blockages, so that the innovation, the technical expertise that they have can take it to fruition rather than getting stumped because of not meeting a particular qualitative requirement. So that delta X gap, which is there between the technical specs required and what the startup can achieve, could be helped by the collaboration with the startups, and also making the funding for them, which would be a major challenge when, especially when you go for complex systems like the weapon systems or the ballistic trajectory correction, which requires funds that the startup may not have. They may have the know-how, but they don't have the funds to take that know-how to fruition. And I think that is where the Japanese industry can come in a big way and help the startups in India. And likewise, also have a startup to startup collaboration between India and Japanese niche technology developers.
Thank you very much, Commodore Bhargava. May I also invite Mr. Nishiyama to give us your comments on why it is that Japan has continued to fail selling US-2 to India or Soryu class to Australia. You know that South Korea seems to be flexing its muscle, so to say, in selling their own submarines as a system to Australia. It may be likely that Japan is going to lose competition vis-a-vis South Korea as well. You've been a veteran of the industry, Mr. Nishiyama. Why it's been so difficult for Japan to sell those products either to India or to Australia?
Taniguchi-san always give me a very, very tough question. Before getting into that, the question that, yeah, I'd like to respond to Commodore Bhargava, sorry, and the licensed production and the co-production. In Japan, we call it licensed production, but in US, same thing, being called co-production. I was wondering why, and then that as you mentioned that our licensed production is not 100% licensed production. The configuration is different. We call it the Japanese unique option. With the communication equipment different, and the aircraft case that the missile is different, so that we need to modify that, so that our configuration is different, so that how much? So is the license production case is the modification is some limited. But maybe the code development more changes applied, so that it's better to look at that the code development case. But what I'm saying, I was trying to say that the co-production could be a good start, and to use that the US-2 or submarine, whatever, that you need the modification for your army or navy. So that is not 100%. It is not the small guns, the pistols. That should be the same. But these complicated large systems have to be modified. Yes, that is true. That have to. Without the modification, nobody can use that.
Absolutely. There's one more issue with the license production, that is the quantity that you can manufacture under the license. That is specified. If it is for, say, 100 guns, you can't make the 101st gun, because then you need another license for the additional numbers. Whereas in co-production, because it is a joint development from both partners, there is no restriction on either the number of that item being produced or subsequent reselling it to the third country. There are no restrictions. So that is the difference between, at least in Indian context, how it is understood with regard to the license production versus co-production.
Okay, but I think I have to use the license production more carefully. But I think using the license production in Japan is that to request a budget in Japan. That is a kind of Japanese thing. And the Tanik-san question, well, that's the very difficult to say, but the US2 case that as I understand, that is Japan is trying to sell it a commercial aircraft to India, not a military aircraft. So that is one difficulty. In the submarine case, that is, I think that I think that the Austrian requirement to implement to that Soryu class, that is difficulty, some difficulty of the communication between Australia and Japan. I myself not involved, and it is be much easier to say. However, that it will be difficult to say that the sales for so-called sales for promotion. I think we Japan is too cautious to sell. And what I wrote here that our government, Japanese government, industry collaboration more closely, that is needed to sell or to promote the international cooperation.
Ladies and gentlemen, we could speak on and on for hours, but time has run up and I must bring this to close. We see 190 or 193 participants as our inaugural session. I must say this has been a stunning success. And I cannot conclude this webinar by appreciating those who have helped support our first inaugural session. Of course, Ministry of Defense and ATLA and SIDM and ISIC, but most importantly, we've been supported by industry partners, Ashok Leyland, Bharat Forge, L&T Defense, MKU, Mahindra, SMPP, Tata, and Zen. Thank you all very much for your generous support. Could I just hand over my microphone to someone who actually is going to give the final remarks? Or should I close this seminar?
No, I think we'll ask Avnish to take over. Thank you so much, Taniguchi-san.
Thank you so much, Taniguchi-san, and thank you all the panelists and, of course, the ambassadors and all of our industry participants who joined us. My remarks over here are inconsequential in the whole scheme of things, but the main person who has been driving this has been James from ISIC, and it has been his persistence that we get this webinar along. And frankly, he has been pushing me quite a bit to get this going, and I have responded to that. So thank you so much, and that's how we have gotten this together. And as Taniguchi-san mentioned, of course, right now, while the session ended, we had about 190. While in the beginning, we had close to about 230, 235. So from the starting to the end, we had a good participation of people who stayed back, and of course, for the inaugural, that shows the interest. And I've been going through the questions, and a lot of questions and inquiries on how we can increase this cooperation. A lot of homework to be done from both at SIDM and ISIC, and of course at the MOD and at ATLA to make this going. Of course, this is the first inaugural one that we're having. Next, as we move along, more and more concrete discussions could take place. And with that, I'll hand it over to James to close it and share his words and how to take it forward.
Yeah, Avnish, that was a splendid program today, and I first have to thank our presenter, Admiral Chauhan, and the illustrious moderator, Taniguchi Tomohiko. We've had a wonderful future ahead just because the dialogue is bringing us together. And without this, there is no business. So we want to make this a feature, a very strong feature of the relationship. And one day in person. But for now, we'll stay online and do hybrid events and bring people together on a regular basis. I think I would just ask all the presenters, including our two ambassadors, to send us their presentations so that we can publish this on the websites for the researchers, for our audience, and for the ongoing conversation to build a base of knowledge. That, after all, is we don't want to let this just fly away. We want to capture it and build on it. So please do forward your presentations to us. And Nishiyama-san, thank you for your presentation. It was great to see information there that we can all get our arms around. We appreciate that. A special thanks to Mr. Araki from ATLA. He took a very courageous step by coming into a public platform, which we want to keep within the Chatham House rules. We want an exchange of views and develop relationships. So to have ATLA involved with us at this point in the inaugural is very important. So everybody, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, James. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you very much, James. And I guess we can gracefully make our exits.
Thank you, Admiral, conducting it so
Thank you,
well.
Mukesh.
Thanks.
We'll be in touch.
We'll be in touch.